By the end, you'll know exactly why a free AI chat still costs someone real money. By the end, you'll know exactly why a free AI chat still costs someone real money. But nothing about running one is free. Someone, somewhere, is paying for it. Every answer uses real electricity in a real building. That's the part nobody shows you. Quick guess. Which costs more per year? Chatting free every day or owning the machine? Hold that answer. We'll check it against real numbers soon. Picture a huge autocomplete, guessing the next piece of your sentence again and again. That guessing happens on GPUs, special chips built for millions of tiny calculations at once. But those chips don't bill you in words, they bill you in something smaller. Tokens. For now, think of a token as a word. Hold on to that. Near the end, I'll show why it's wrong and why it costs you more. So every reply gets priced by counting these pieces, then multiplicative by a price per piece. Renting access to a model can cost just a few dollars per million tokens. Run that math on one short reply, sent daily for a year, and here's what comes out. Cents a day for one person, thousands of messages an hour, and it's a real budget line. I'm skipping how batching cuts costs. If you've built this, tell me what really moves the price. Renting adds up the more you use it. So what if you just owned the machine? Buy the machine, and the rental question disappears. You own the box outright. A GPU that can actually run a decent model costs around $1,600. $1,600 before you've typed a single word. Install the model locally, and it runs entirely on your own hardware. No server involved. Now every message is free, technically, because you already paid for the machine. But the machine isn't free to run. Electricity has a price too. Electricity, the cost nobody thinks about. A power-hungry GPU can pull 350 watts, running flat out for hours. Run it 8 hours a day, and that's roughly 40 cents of electricity daily. GPUs also age. The fastest chip today is outdated within a few years. So, buying isn't just $1,600. It's $1,600 plus electricity, plus decay. So, which one actually wins? The rental or the box sitting in your closet? Let's do the math out loud. No calculator tricks, just the numbers on screen. Renting costs about 2 cents per 1,000 words. If a token really were a word. 2 cents. Barely anything. Now, compare that to owning $1,600 before you've typed a single prompt. Divide 1,600 by 2 cents, and you need 80,000 messages to break even. 80,000 messages. About 7 years of heavy daily use. But your GPU won't last 7 years. It's outdated in 3, maybe less. So, on paper, renting wins easily for almost anyone who isn't running a company. Unless you're sending millions of messages a day, then what happens to the math? At company scale, the GPU and the electricity pay for themselves in weeks, not years. That's why companies buy racks of GPUs, and you and I just rent an app. But there's a problem hiding inside every number I just gave you. Here's the confession. A token is not a word. I lied on purpose. A token is roughly 3/4 of a word, sometimes whole, sometimes just a fragment. Watch this word split. Unbelievable breaks into 3 separate tokens, not one. So every number I gave you earlier was too optimistic. Real pricing runs per token, and 1,000 words is closer to 1,300 tokens. So that 2-cent estimate becomes closer to 2.5 cents per 1,000 words. Tiny difference per message, enormous difference at 1 billion messages a day. Multiply that correction across every request the big providers serve, and it's millions of dollars. That's the real bill somebody pays, so your chat feels free. Free was never free. It's rent paid by the company, hoping you'll pay them back some other way. So next time an AI chat feels free, remember, someone somewhere is paying the rent. Fair point, but buyers aren't safe from rising costs either. Those costs just show up differently. That GPU you just bought starts losing real value the moment a faster chip ships next quarter. Depreciation alone can quietly erase 10% of your hardware's total value every single quarter. Nobody ever puts that ugly depreciation number anywhere near the glossy sales page. Then, add power. A single high-end GPU can pull 400 watts running non-stop all year. Run that math for 12 months and your electricity bill alone tops $3,000 easily. And someone still has to patch it, cool it, and eventually replace it when it finally dies. Hire someone to babysit that server rack around the clock, and there goes another chunk of your budget. That constant upkeep is basically a full-time job hiding inside what looked like one simple purchase. So, rent or buy, you're still paying physics its share every single month. Remember that shortcut? A token is a word? Time to admit, that was a convenient lie. Real tokenizers slice words into smaller pieces. Running might become run plus ning. On average, one token equals about 0.75 words, not a full one. So, every single estimate we made earlier was actually about 30% too low. Even OpenAI's own documentation warns that word counts are just rough approximations, nothing exact. Short version, that small gap still adds up shockingly fast, especially at real scale. Punctuation counts too. Commas, quotes, even a lonely space can cost a full token. Even a single word splits differently depending on the language you happen to be typing in. Spanish and Chinese simply don't tokenize the same way English does. Not even close. Fix that one number, and the whole red versus buy math shifts completely under your feet. Let's rerun the entire calculation using the corrected token count instead of guessing words. At $3 per million tokens, a million words actually costs about $4, not $3. That's not just rounding error. At scale, it's the difference between profit and quiet, bleeding loss. Small gap alone, but multiply it across 1 million daily users, and it becomes real money. Renting still wins for anyone using under roughly 10 million tokens every month, hands down. Cross that line though, and buying the GPU starts paying for itself within a single year. Most people never even bother to find that exact line for themselves. Yet every chat app you casually open already made that decision for you, silently. So free chat was never actually free. Someone already picked a side of that line. Next time a chat box answers you instantly, ask yourself, who's really paying for that speed? Earlier, I called a token a word. That was a lie, a useful one. A 1,000-word answer is actually about 1,300 tokens, the number providers really bill. At $15 per million output tokens, that answer costs about 2 cents, not 1. Input tokens are cheaper than output tokens. Reading your question costs less than writing the reply. And every reply rereads the whole conversation, so costs climb the longer you keep chatting. That's rented pricing. Buying the GPU changes the equation entirely. A single high-end GPU costs around $30,000 before answering one question. Own it and you pay electricity, whether you send one query or 10,000. Running that GPU non-stop costs roughly $200 a month in electricity alone. So which side of that line does a single free chat message land on? Every free message you send is really a company renting GPU time on your behalf. You never see that invoice, but the meter is still spinning, just on their card, not yours. Free for you almost always means paid for by someone else, somewhere in the chain. Most people never run this math, which is exactly why that rent buy line stays invisible. So, rent or buy? Tell me your guess in the comments. I read every single one. The next part breaks down the real hardware cost behind buying that GPU outright. But before that, have you ever been surprised by a bill for something you assumed was free? A streaming trial, a cloud plan, a free AI chat. The pattern repeats everywhere. Somebody, somewhere, always finds out the true cost of free, the hard way. The next time an AI replies in under a second, remember, somewhere, an electricity meter just spun. And now you know exactly whose pocket felt it.